All right, looks like everyone's coming in. It's great to be here today. Great to see so many folks within the ecosystem interested in our topic here. It's a great session, highly relevant. Today we're going to be focusing on connected app monitoring as a key defense against AI risks. Most of the audience knows about connected apps, knows about applications that are integrated into Salesforce. This has been a recurring kind of operational challenge for many, but it's a risk blind spot for some. The addition of AI has impact. Obviously, it helps your business move fast, helps take advantage of the connectivity of Salesforce into the rest of the things that your business is trying to accomplish. But it also has exponential impact on kind of the risk surface and the ability for that risk surface to be exposed. And so we've got a good topic, highly relevant. In terms of the flow, for those that are with us, so today we're going to go through some key trends. We're going to go through some details of the key risks and considerations that you should have as it relates to AI and Agentforce. We'll go through some of the key things you think you should think about from a readiness standpoint. And then finally, we'll touch on a little bit what good looks like. And in terms of the flow, we'll keep this to 30 minutes. Like always, we'll keep it interactive. And Jack's a tremendous to me here and certainly has a lot of knowledge to share. We want to keep it specific to the things that you care about. So as you have topics, I'll be monitoring the chat and interject accordingly. We'll also have time at the end, but don't feel free to interject as you see fit before then. And I think with that, audience looks good. Let's jump into it, Jack. That's a lot of words from me, but let's jump into it. So, Jack, great to see you again. For those that don't know you, it'd be great to give a little background on who you are and what informs your perspective on today's topic.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Jack McGlinchey, co-founder and CEO of Sonar. Been building with or on top of Salesforce for at least the last 10 years now, and just seen a lot of things change. And this is probably the most exciting topic that I've come across in the last 10 years. Really excited to share with you today some of the things that we're seeing, some of the things that we're learning across our customer base here at Sonar, and hopefully have a good discussion today on connected apps and keeping Salesforce secure.
Amazing. Amazing. And Jack is on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with us to stay informed. And maybe before we go into it, I think just to help understand who we have with us, if we could kick off the quick poll just to get some context. Connected apps and integrations are obviously a part of many deployments. Maybe Jack, a little bit of color. For those that aren't familiar with the term connected app integrations, like what do these represent and what are the types of things that companies are using to connect into Salesforce?
Yeah, great question. I think over the last 20 plus years, Salesforce has done an incredible job of building out one of the most prolific platforms in the world. And connected apps are all of the applications that have built into the Salesforce ecosystem. So everything from the tools that your sales teams use on top of Salesforce to do their jobs, marketing automation. We've got product analytics hooked up to ours. And then obviously with a ton of the work that they're doing with Amazon, we're starting to see teams even build their data lake on top of Salesforce as well. We think about connected apps as anything that either puts data into Salesforce or extracts data out of Salesforce using their API.
And what do you expect what's the typical answer to this question? How many apps currently integrated into Salesforce? Poll's going to close here in a minute. What do you expect based on the conversations that you're having with the market?
Got cheated before the webinar. I had someone help me run a quick analysis. So across the hundreds of customers that we have, the average number of connected apps for our customers is 57. It's a lot more than they expect usually, and it's a lot to manage. Teams are being asked to do a lot with managing a lot of these external integrations.
57. So that would be 40 plus.
Yeah.
Is our poll closed? Did the poll close yet?
There we go.
There we go. All right. I'm not seeing the results on mine, but why don't we jump into it? That'll pop up here in a minute. And let's go into kind of the key trends. I know we were just at TDX, which is a big Salesforce event for some of the risk and compliance folks that are with us today. Or I guess it's a big Agentforce event rather than Salesforce. But maybe what are some of the key trends that we're seeing in terms of AI and Agentforce if we progress to the next slide?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, TDX this year was great. As you mentioned, it's definitely been rebranded as Agentforce. And what I saw two big trend buckets breaking out. The first is obviously what Salesforce is doing with Agentforce, building on top of the Einstein platform and the data cloud. And then separately, how do third-party tools and all of the AI that's being built on top of those applications also fit into this whole complex environment? I think between kind of inside the box, what Salesforce is doing on top of the And then also the third-party tools that are coming out as well. We really saw a lot of focus in terms of how to manage those applications, how to govern those applications, how to keep data safe, and then also just how to keep data in a good spot. And so you can just tell like everything is shaking up at Salesforce. I was even speaking to an AE about some additional products that we were evaluating, and everything from their pricing model moving to a consumption-based model as opposed to how many seats you're buying. We're really seeing all of this AI technology upending how everyone's thinking about everything. My mindset was like, it's not just a cool thing that people are building with, it's changing how we're paying our bills to how we're instrumenting this across the business. And so it's incredibly exciting.
Yeah, 100%. And those are really cool pictures. What about double click any into that, Jack, and your specific experience in building agents? I know integrating with Security Center, we have a lot of obviously connectivity into the product team over at Salesforce. Maybe just, I think it'd be helpful for the audience to have a little color of kind of what does that process look like and what was your insight from having gone through that?
Yeah, I would probably describe it. I would use the word whiplash, I guess, is maybe the best feeling. It was surprising to me how far ahead they were with the actual technology. Salesforce is an incredible marketing machine, but TDX this year really showed how much of it was actually real and how much of it was live. And so helping the team go through and build out actual agents that we were demoing at TDX was pretty incredible for what I find at a typical Salesforce event. But sort of where the whiplash comes through is also just how early things are. You could just tell it was the Wild West with how everyone was talking about it and how things were even architected. Basic things like version control or being able to make updates to the agent were missing, but at the same time, the ability to have like LLMs out of the box analyze like security or configuration settings like in real time was it was crazy. It was like back and forth. I was like simultaneously impressed and simultaneously scared at how both just where we are in this change curve.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe. Really impressive. Yeah, you just prompted me. Like Salesforce obviously has a lot of sessions, and a lot of it is slide based historically. But they were doing real time demos and talking to folks that were going into sessions and being like, "Yeah, we created this demo this morning
Yeah.
because the technology was there. We created the prompt, and this is now live." Which is amazing how quick it's going. It's how quickly they're moving on it, and the capability exists, and that creates additional risks from some blind spots of things that maybe organizations haven't considered from a governance standpoint. And maybe we jump into that. So what are the incremental security challenges or additional security challenges that AI and Agentforce affects to those that are using Salesforce and using it in a business and mission critical way that has sensitive data and is critical to the business, not just as a kind of traditional CRM?
Yeah, I think what I found from a risk standpoint is that when you really break it down to the first principles of the problem, they're not new problems. They're just making the current problems we have even more profoundly impactful for the business. So everyone talks about how crappy the data is in their Salesforce. But if you want to make really crappy data even more impactful on the business, have an LLM generate insights and recommendations based on that data. Before you hide it away in fields that people weren't looking at, they probably wouldn't find because it's just a lot. The LLMs and the Agentforce platform allows you to surface these things automatically. And one of the big complaints I heard from there is just like that data from an ops standpoint just made a lot of this like even more of a problem. Similarly, things like misconfigurations and breakages, having data in this CRM misconfigured from an access standpoint. Again, these LLMs don't, there's some guardrails that they're building in, and I think they're doing a great job up front trying to go with the trust theme. But you could just tell that you set some guardrails for these agents, you give them some topics, and you point them in the right direction, but then they just run. And if things are misconfigured, if it's not perfect, these LLMs can start to expose a lot of data to internal users that I don't think a lot of people are really yet aware of. And because of how these LLMs act as their own agents, right? Again, you just have to it takes that permissions, that profile configuration, and just extrapolates the problem into a lot of new areas that I don't think people really have their arms wrapped around. I know certainly as I was going through it's so powerful, but it also just, again, exposes all this information in a way that, going back to that whiplash point, it was scary. Similarly, right, like the idea of data leakage and data loss was coming up a lot too. again, these external applications that are extracting data, the LLMs that are leveraging this information from an external standpoint, again, it just, because they're able to go fetch this data, they're able to do things that they want with it. It just surfaces a lot of the risk that lies under the hood that maybe it's just not as prevalent or not as a burning problem today with a lot of the manual work that goes into it. With the AI, it happens automatically and it happens so fast. If you deploy these things out to your user base, it happens at scale. And again, it's not just a read problem. These agents are able to write data as well. So one of the demos we built, it wasn't just that we identified a security risk. It was that the agent could then create a case and modify data on the case and go in and actually make updates for you. Again, incredibly powerful. But if things aren't configured correctly and you don't have the proper guardrails in place, you don't have things configured the right way, the agents were able to do destructive things, even though they were operating within their boundaries. And then I think really the fourth bucket, and again, this isn't new, but the compliance standpoint just becomes even a bigger problem. The platform team at the keynote was demonstrating how we're even having to start to think about these LLMs need access to the data, but then when they spit it back out, what do they hide? What do they not show? So in order to make a recommendation, they need access to really critical data, but they also need to be smart enough not to turn around and display it to the end user. Starting to look at things like data masking or like actually like hiding sensitive data was becoming a new theme that, again, from a Salesforce perspective, I don't think it's something we've really had to grapple with. Sensitive data is actually really sensitive now, and the ability to expose that sensitive data both internally and externally is really climbing. And again, these buckets aren't new, right? But the impact and the ability for actually bad things to happen it's growing rapidly. And I think it's only going to become more of a problem if teams aren't ready for it.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And I think, but no questions as of yet, so we're doing good on time. Feel free to interject with questions. The quiet group today. Maybe as we go to the next slide and just talk about readiness, I think the point that I would make is an accelerant, not just on the business, but on what I would say that maybe I'll call a dumpster fire of the lack of security guardrails and governance guardrails. Most organizations, unfortunately, haven't done a lot of the blocking and tackling of mitigating the risks that they expected to in Salesforce over the years. And so as those holes still exist, and now you add this accelerant with the AI as an accelerant, that dumpster fire becomes a wildfire with just one or two lack of misconfigurations or holes. And I know that security folks that we talk to are very concerned about that. And again, it's not a problem that hasn't existed for a while in terms of managing connected apps and managing what those apps can see and do, but it's a reason and trigger to solve it now versus 2 years from now.
You bring up a good point, Brian. It's not just that this is a new problem. It's also that I think most organizations are facing a ton of pressure to adopt AI. I think every press release that I read from public companies talking about their financials, like every single one talks about how internally they're adopting AI in order to drive efficiencies. Every leader that I'm talking to is pushing all of their teams to adopt AI. And so it's not just that the technology is accelerating, it's that businesses are pushing the adoption so rapidly to the new technology that the change curve is really compressing. And it's, again, just making a lot of these problems compound. And I think that's really where the security teams are feeling the pressure right now.
100%. 100%. And you need to enable that acceleration because the business is requiring it. And good call. Let's get into, so from a readiness standpoint, for those, again, no questions as of yet, feel free to interject. So what does readiness look like? What are some of the key considerations as you think about protecting your Salesforce environment to take advantage of the capabilities without increasing the risk, the attack surface?
Yeah, this is a great question. There's a lot to unpack here, and I don't think you can do everything at once. And so I think prioritizing here is going to be really important. So the first thing I think that's really critical is just visibility into everything. I think today, again, Salesforce has done such an incredible job building out such a massive platform that it's very powerful. But if you don't have proper visibility into all of this, it becomes unwieldy to manage. And so the first thing that we're seeing is just the visibility of configuration and also of the application. Do you actually know today which applications are connected? Do you know which ones have active OAuth tokens? Do you know who's extracting data from your system? And again, it's not a point in time thing. This is an ongoing monitoring. So as teams go in and connect to new applications, are you aware and understanding of which applications are connected? And then if you take that a layer deeper, right? Not only are you aware of which applications are connected, but do you know what they're extracting? Do you know what they're using? Are these fields properly documented and classified such that, hey, our marketing system is using a ton of PII? That's something that we're aware of and we're actively monitoring. Or did you know that the junior salesperson on the team connected a new AI app that they're using to summarize their meetings is also extracting that same PII, and has that vendor been vetted, right? These are really important questions that I think sales or security teams need to be able to answer, and be able to answer quickly, and be able to answer in a scalable way. Like I mentioned, I cheated earlier, but with 50 plus connected apps in the average org, it's not feasible to monitor and manage these by yourself and doing it manually. We think this is a great opportunity for teams to really think about how they're monitoring their connected apps.
Yeah, exactly. And again, to the other points that you raised earlier, these are things that you should have been doing already. And best in
Yeah, that's
class
right.
organizations, especially those that are capturing PII or PHI or heavily government compliant or regulated industries are on the front end of
Mhm.
monitoring these connected apps. And so you should be doing this anyways. And if you haven't yet, now is the time, because AI and Agentforce is that accelerant. And yeah, so do it now if you haven't yet.
Yeah, a great point. And I think on top of that, like, it's not just enough to know what's being connected and what's being extracted, but even foundationally, do you have a good understanding of your data? And I think, again, it goes back to that, do you have bad data or good data? It's like actually understanding what's in the system, but also understanding what that data is, right? Do you know which, down to the field level, which fields are PII or PHI or sensitive financial fields, or things that fall under other compliance frameworks? Like which data is sensitive and what's not? It's pretty impossible to evaluate the risk of a vendor or the risk of an agent if you don't know even what it's accessing. And so just even some of the fundamentals we think around like how your data is documented is just becoming even more critical. It's not enough to just let people create new fields on the fly and shove data in there. Like having a really strong understanding of what that data is, how it's classified, how it's being used is really important for these agents, especially if you're thinking about broadly deploying them across the org.
100%. Yeah. And yeah, I was on a call this morning with a huge pharmaceutical company. There were 20 people in the room, and they were talking about the Excel spreadsheets that they were emailing to each other about their data dictionary to minimize the PHI. And yeah, we can help. That's not sustainable, and recognition of that. And this is now the reason to make sure that you solve that problem. We've got about 8 minutes left. Why don't we keep going, and we'll just, we have a couple minutes at the end in case folks get a little bit more open. So what does good look like? Yeah. So if you were to say, just an example of what good looks like, and I know we'll use some of our capabilities to describe that, but what are best in class organizations doing to mitigate these risks?
Great question. So, like I said, I think step one is, do you understand your data, right? Is it all inventoried? Is it all classified? Is it well documented? Is it up to date? Is it a process in place to keep it up to date? Again, this is where we've really leveraged AI in order to help keep our own system documented and classified. So that's like step one is, do you understand your data? Do you have it mapped out? Do you know where it's going? Do you have it classified? The second bucket really is around like, do you understand who has access to it? Down to the user level, down to the profile permission sets. Do you understand how all of these things are working together in order to grant access to these external systems, to these agents, to these users, and really making sure, again, that's a well-documented, understood, and managed process. Brian, to your point, I can't tell you how many times we've seen people go through this exercise once. They get it clean, they get it good, but they don't also take the step to think about how they're going to manage this long term, because Salesforce is a living, breathing system. And so a lot of these things are constantly updating. And so making sure that you have a real-time view of this, you've got a process in place, you've got monitoring and alerting set up so you know when new things are changing. I mean, you've really built a cadence around keeping these things up to date, I think is just as important. And then beyond that, making sure that the agents themselves are also aligned with business processes. So making sure that the agents just aren't doing random things and, again, not being well thought out. I think designing the agents just as much as you thought about designing your data architecture is really important as well. So making sure that those agents are really, really well designed, really well architected on top of the data, I think is going to really help keep things in a good place for the long term. And then finally, making sure that you have change management and training beyond that. So as users are using the AI, as you're making sure that there's changes going on, just making sure there's a good change management process, I think is also a really good process. Just making sure that there's user feedback involved, there's strong iteration, testing, monitoring, improvements, all of those things bucketed together at the end. I think really allows teams to operationalize this, like deploying it out to their teams, making sure they're extracting the value out of it, but at the same time, doing so in a way that moderates the risk that the business is exposing itself to.
Amazing. No questions. as of, 5 minutes left. A quick snapshot on kind of some of the things that we're doing to mitigate that, Jack, with the connected apps and that pretty mesmerizing graphic we have there.
Yeah. So again, these problems come from feedback that we've gotten from hundreds of customers. We're really trying to help solve some of these problems. There's a lot of different solutions out there. Ours we're particularly proud of, but really trying to help teams with that visibility aspect, giving you a real-time view of what applications are connected, where data is going. As you can see here with our application overview, we give you full visibility into that stack automatically. Again, depending on where you're at in your journey, what you're trying to tackle right now, we're really helping teams go through that adoption process. Again, if you don't know your tech stack, if you don't know which applications are connected, you don't know how your data is classified, you want to process or at least start to clean this stuff up, it's definitely one area that we're really focused on.
Cool. And then as we go into kind of the monitoring of an individual app, we have about 3 minutes left. Questions now or save them for later. Jack, what happened? How do you monitor an individual app?
Yeah, again, depending on where you're at in your journey, we think eventually we think every customer of ours or every Salesforce customer should probably take a look at Shield. Again, as AI increases the risk, your investment in some of the security infrastructure should go along with it. An example workflow that we might help with, right, is some sales manager is testing out a new tool, and we can detect in real time that application like Zoom Info was connected. We can then see exactly which fields are accessed, which fields are extracted. We can identify that the data is sensitive. And for example, social security number was a random field that someone mapped. We saw that sensitive data was extracted. Again, real-time alerts, identifying changes to the third-party applications. We give you the ability to action on as well. So if you want to revoke access to the application, provide additional documentation, we've got some AI layered on top of it as well to automate as much of it as we can. And then from there, you can generate policies and procedures around that to ensure that it doesn't happen in the future. And so again, this is if you're running, right? Like you're ready to go beyond this or to go beyond the basics. These are the kinds of things that you can work towards, but this is an automated workflow that we really help solve for.
Cool.
A couple good questions.
And again, yeah, go ahead. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, no, a couple good questions related. One of the questions was, is this visibility available for anyone with Salesforce? So we can provide an entire diagram of your tech stack out of the box. The initial sync that we provide probably takes anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour, depending on how much data you have. You don't need Shield in order to answer this question. And we'd love to show you if you're interested in seeing more. And again, this just with the out-of-the-box Salesforce implementation. If you want to do something more sophisticated than what I've got in this workflow, you probably need something like Shield in order to provide some of the extra data. But again, it's down the road if you're not quite there. So it's not a blocker. As far as implementation for something like this, another question that came in, one of the key product tenets we have here at Sonar is to make implementation as easy as possible. We do run a proof of concept. We're able to get things spun up in a matter of minutes. Sometimes the data extraction takes a little time, but in terms of time that you have to invest in actually getting things set up is really minimal. Again, Salesforce's platform is incredibly powerful. We built an ingestion platform that we're really proud of as well, and it makes it really easy to see a lot of this. Where does the time come in for you if you're thinking about implementation? Again, going through and understanding your data takes a lot of business context that you have to help guide the system in. So again, if you want to document every single field, whether or not it's PII, we can get you probably 90% of the way there really quickly. The last 10% is going to require some insights from you and your team. But again, we make it really easy to do it in bulk, make it really easy to do it quickly. So it depends on where you're at in your journey. But if you just want to get started, you want to get visibility into the system and just really understand how things are working, that implementation is incredibly lightweight.
Great. And we did get a couple other questions, but we're right at the 30-minute mark. We want to be responsive to everybody's time. Thanks for joining us today, Jack. Thanks for sharing your expertise. Jack is on LinkedIn, LinkedIn, LinkedIn. Stay connected to keep informed on how we're helping customers solve these problems, and be on the lookout for the next session that's going to come up here in April. And if we can help in any way, let us know, and we'll connect with everybody soon. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks.
All right, good stuff. Thanks, everybody.